Sign the marital settlement agreement, and $30 million is yours. Ethan Cole pushed the document across the dining table just as Claire Bennett carried the roasted sea bass in from the kitchen. Hot butter splashed across the back of her hand. She did not flinch. Her eyes stayed on the black letters printed across the folder. Marital Settlement Agreement. For 5 years, Claire had called the Cole estate in Westchester County home. She had chosen the linen curtains, supervised the restoration of the old oak floors, and planted the white hydrangeas outside the breakfast room because Ethan once said they reminded him of the first apartment they had shared in Brooklyn. Tonight, the house felt like a boardroom where she had already been voted out. Vanessa Reed stood beside Ethan. At 29, Vanessa was Cole Holdings' head of corporate communications and the daughter of Richard Reed, founder of Reed Capital. She wore a loose cream dress and kept one hand protectively over a stomach that was still almost flat. Her other hand rested possessively around Ethan's arm. She had arranged her face into a look of fragile guilt. The triumph in her eyes ruined the performance. Margaret Cole sat in the chair nearest the fireplace. She was not merely Ethan's mother. She was chairwoman of the Cole Holdings board and co-trustee of the family trust. A printed ultrasound report lay beside her untouched glass of wine. Vanessa is carrying a Cole child, Margaret said. Her voice held the same cold authority she used in board meetings. A family-controlled company needs a clear succession plan. You and Ethan have tried for 5 years. There has been no child. It is time for you to leave with dignity. Claire looked past Margaret and studied her husband. 7 years earlier, when she met Ethan, Cole Holdings had been a struggling consumer tech company valued at less than $8 million. Ethan could not close his second round of financing. Investors hated the branding, retailers did not understand the product, and the company's pitch deck looked like it had been assembled during a power outage. Claire had quit a promising position at a New York design firm to help him. She rebuilt the brand identity, redesigned the packaging, rewrote the investor presentation, and opened the first conversations with boutique retailers who later became the company's most important accounts. She had never received an executive title. She had told herself it did not matter because they were building something together. Now Cole Holdings was a Delaware corporation headquartered in Manhattan, privately valued at nearly $900 million. Ethan had long since stopped being the man who once held her in their tiny Brooklyn kitchen and promised, "When this company succeeds, everyone will know you were the reason I survived." "Divorce is fine," Claire said. She set the platter down and calmly wiped the butter from her hand. "But the $30 million has to be transferred into an irrevocable third-party escrow account before I sign. My attorney confirms the release conditions, then I execute the agreement." Ethan's expression hardened. "That is all you care about? The money? That is the price your own legal team assigned to my waiver of every claim against the marital increase in the company's value." Claire met his eyes. "I did not invent the number. Your lawyers did." Cole Holdings had multiplied in value more than 100 times during their marriage. Ethan had owned shares before the wedding, but Claire's direct and indirect contributions to the company's growth could keep a high-net-worth divorce in court for years. The $30 million was not a gift. It was the cash buyout Ethan had offered to protect his shares, avoid discovery into the company's books, and keep the family trust from being examined in open litigation. Vanessa touched his sleeve. "Ethan, Claire must be devastated. Maybe she needs a few days." No, he did not take his eyes off Claire. 10 tomorrow morning. Harrison and Grant on Madison Avenue. Both legal teams will be present. The funds go into escrow, we sign before a notary, and the judgment gets filed. After that, we are finished. "All right," Claire answered so quickly that Ethan blinked. He had expected tears. Anger. Accusations. At the very least, he had expected her to bargain for one more chance, the way she had tried to repair every argument in their marriage. Instead, she removed her apron, folded it over the back of a chair, and carried the dinner she had spent hours preparing to the sink. One dish at a time, she scraped it into the disposal. The movement was clean and efficient, like clearing away something that had expired long ago. "You do not have to perform for me," Ethan said, irritated by a feeling he could not name. This dinner was made for my husband. Claire turned off the water. My husband has chosen another family. There is no reason to save it. Margaret rose. Sign without causing a scene tomorrow. Vanessa's condition cannot tolerate stress, and this family does not have time for your resentment. When the three of them left the dining room, the house finally became quiet. Claire went upstairs to the guest room where she had been sleeping for the last 4 months. From the back of the safe, she removed a thick manila envelope. It contained no jewelry, no title deeds, and no sentimental photographs. Inside was a male reproductive medicine report from 5 years earlier. The report came from one of Manhattan's largest fertility centers. 3 separate tests had reached the same conclusion: non-obstructive azoospermia. No sperm had been detected in any sample. Natural conception was considered extremely unlikely. Ethan's name appeared at the top of every page. During their fertility evaluation, Ethan and Claire had signed a mutual medical information release, allowing the clinic to provide the results to either spouse. Claire had received the report legally. The specialist had recommended further testing and possible treatment. At the time, Ethan was in the middle of a financing crisis. Claire had been afraid the diagnosis would crush him. She told herself she would wait until the company was stable, then sit down with him gently. Before she found the courage, Margaret began blaming Claire for the lack of a child. At first, Ethan defended her. Then he became distant. Eventually, he allowed his mother to refer to Claire as the problem without correcting her. On his worst days, he joined in. Claire endured it for 5 years. Not because she was weak. Because she had loved him enough to protect the part of him he was most afraid to face. Then, 1 month earlier, Ethan had left his tablet in the back seat of her car. A message from Vanessa lit the screen. Once I start showing, you can end the marriage without looking like the villain. My father will move forward with the merger after the baby trust is established. That was the moment Claire stopped waiting for an explanation. The next morning, both legal teams, 2 witnesses, and a notary gathered in a conference room at Harrison and Grant. Claire's attorney, Eleanor Grant, confirmed every term in a voice sharp enough to cut glass. $30 million had been wired into an escrow account managed by an independent trust company. Claire was the named beneficiary. Once both parties signed, the funds would automatically transfer into her personal asset protection trust. Ethan could not revoke the payment or demand its return because of any later dispute. The agreement stated that the money represented a final settlement of Claire's claims concerning the marital appreciation of Cole Holdings, Ethan's personal shares, and all other disputed marital assets. It was not a gift. It was not hush money. Ethan drummed his fingers against the polished table. You are protecting yourself from me as though I am a criminal. Your lawyers designed the structure, Claire said, turning to the last page. I am simply making certain you never claim I took something that did not belong to me. She reviewed the final release condition, picked up her pen, and signed without hesitation. The notary stamped the documents. The attorneys exchanged copies. Less than a minute later, Eleanor's phone displayed the confirmation from the trust company. The money belonged to Claire. Ethan stared at her signature. For one strange second, he felt as if something inside him had dropped away. Then he remembered Vanessa was waiting downstairs, the board was reviewing the Reed partnership, and a future he had already chosen was moving forward without delay. From this moment on, we owe each other nothing, he said. No, Claire closed the folder. The money settles the property dispute. It does not settle the truth. She removed a white envelope from her handbag and slid it toward him. You owe me an apology I no longer want. As for the thing I kept from you for 5 years, I am returning it now. She left before he could answer. Morning sunlight poured between the towers on Madison Avenue. Claire stepped onto the sidewalk and did not look back. 10 minutes later, Ethan opened the envelope. The color drained from his face as he read the conclusion of the fertility report. Beneath it, Claire had written one sentence. You may doubt a 5-year-old diagnosis, but before you place company shares in that child's trust, have yourself tested again. Ethan went to a reproductive medicine clinic the same day. It had no relationship with the Cole family, Cole Holdings, Reed Capital, or any of their insurers. He told no one except Daniel Brooks, his chief of staff, who cleared his schedule and placed the visit under a private name. 2 semen analyses, hormone testing, ultrasound, genetic screening. Each result landed like a blow. 3 days later, the department director placed the new report on the desk between them. Mr. Cole, combined with the records from 5 years ago, the findings remain consistent. We did not identify sperm in either sample. Medicine rarely speaks in absolutes, but natural conception would be extraordinarily unlikely. A surgical retrieval procedure could determine whether there are isolated viable cells, but that is a separate question. Ethan's throat felt tight. Could a woman become pregnant naturally with my child? The doctor did not speculate about any specific relationship. An ultrasound confirms a pregnancy, not paternity. If biological parentage must be established, use a properly accredited relationship testing laboratory. Both parties should be identified at an independent collection site, and the samples should remain under documented chain of custody. Rain streaked the windows of Ethan's car when he left the clinic. Vanessa had sent 14 messages. Margaret had sent 6. Both wanted to know why he had disappeared and whether he had chosen a date for the engagement announcement. For the first time in years, Ethan did not immediately believe the people closest to him. That evening, Vanessa arrived at the estate with a fresh prenatal report. "I know Claire gave you something," she said, eyes already red. "She hates me for taking you away. Of course, she would use an old document to frighten you. The baby is 9 weeks. I heard the heartbeat yesterday." Margaret seized the report and scanned it. "I knew that woman would not leave gracefully. $30 million was not enough. She still wants to destroy this family's succession plan." Ethan ignored his mother. He looked at Vanessa. "Take a prenatal paternity test." Her face froze for less than a second. Then she gripped his hand. "I will. But I have been bleeding. My doctor says I should avoid anything unnecessary until the pregnancy is stable. Are you really going to endanger a child because of a report from 5 years ago?" Her tears came quickly. Margaret drew her into an embrace and glared at Ethan as though he had become cruel. He did not back down. "When your doctor clears you, the collection will happen at an independent site chosen by both attorneys. IDs will be verified. The samples will be witnessed, sealed, and delivered directly to an accredited lab." Vanessa eventually nodded through her tears. 2 days later, she arrived with a paternity report of her own. It came from Northbridge Genetics. The conclusion stated that Ethan Cole was supported as the biological father of the fetus, with a probability greater than 99.9%. Vanessa placed the report in front of him. "Do you believe me now?" Margaret announced that very night that Cole Holdings' 20th anniversary gala would also include Ethan and Vanessa's engagement and the creation of a trust for the unborn child. Ethan did not object publicly. Daniel, however, studied the report and frowned. Northbridge Genetics had a polished website, a Manhattan mailing address, and testimonials from private physicians. It was not listed among accredited relationship testing laboratories. The blood collection had occurred not at an independent site, but at a private obstetrics clinic owned by Reed Medical Network. The chain of custody form had no signature from an independent witness. There was no photo identification record for the man whose blood had allegedly been submitted as Ethan's. "The lab may have tested real samples," Daniel said. "But nothing here proves the male sample belonged to you." Ethan's fingers stopped at the bottom corner of the report. On paper, Northbridge had no direct connection to the Reed family. Daniel traced the ownership through 2 holding companies and a medical investment fund. The fund was managed by a longtime advisor to Reed Capital. While Ethan's world began to split open, Claire moved into a modest apartment in Lower Manhattan. She did not buy a penthouse. She did not fill closets with designer clothes or spend her settlement proving she had one. Most of the money went into an independently managed asset protection trust. She kept a carefully defined operating budget and called Professor Helen Morris, her former mentor at Parsons School of Design. Before marriage, Claire had won a national award for emerging brand designers and worked at one of New York's most respected creative studios. She had abandoned that career when Ethan's company was weeks away from collapse. The earliest Cole Holdings logo, The first investor deck, the launch packaging, and the original retail system had all come from her hands. Her name appeared on none of them. Helen reviewed the old source files, sketches, and process books in silence. "You did not lose your talent," she finally said. "You buried it inside someone else's resume." The words almost broke Clare. Instead, they woke her up. Helen introduced her to Julian Hayes, founder of an independent creative brand company. Julian offered no sympathy project and no special treatment because Clare had once been married to Ethan Cole. He offered her a real assignment. A major Southwest artisan design exhibition in Santa Fe needed a complete visual identity. Any use of Pueblo or other indigenous artistic traditions had to be developed in formal partnership with the artists themselves. Nothing could be lifted, diluted, or used as decorative shorthand. Clare accepted. She spent 7 nights working with 3 local artists, rebuilding the concept 16 times until the system felt respectful, contemporary, and specific to the people represented. The day before submission, the core visual structure appeared online under the name of a creative agency owned by Reed Capital. The agency accused Clare of plagiarism and sent the exhibition organizers a cease and desist letter. Clare had not even opened her studio, and she was already being called a thief who had stolen from her former husband's company. Rachel Morgan, Clare's closest friend, wanted to call the police before she finished reading the accusation. Clare remained calm. She collected the metadata from every source file, the cloud version history, her emails with the artists, the copyright registration filings, and the full project correspondence. A digital forensics firm found that someone had accessed Clare's private cloud account through an old computer in the Cole Holdings brand department. Years earlier, when she stepped away from the company, an automatic sync credential had remained active on that machine. The most recent person to download her private files was an assistant assigned to Vanessa Reed. The announcement of Ethan and Vanessa's engagement reached New York's business press, while Clare sat in a lawyer's office, preserving the forensic evidence. In the photograph, Vanessa wore white and rested one hand against her stomach. Ethan stood beside her, expression unreadable, but he did not deny the reports that he would marry the mother of his child. Rachel turned Clare's phone face down. "He has seen his medical report and he is still going through with this? That is his decision." Clare continued reviewing the forensic timeline. "I gave him the truth I owed him. Whether he chooses to accept it is no longer my responsibility." What mattered to her now was the stolen work. The investigation showed that Vanessa's assistant had downloaded Clare's private design files and forwarded them to the Reed-owned agency. The supposedly original work they published even contained a sequential watermark Clare had hidden inside a locked layer. Julian did not cancel Clare's contract. He did not blindly defend her either. "The greatest danger in this industry is not being copied," he told her. "It is being unable to prove who created the work first. You have 3 days. Win with evidence, not with your last name or your former marriage." Clare supplemented her copyright filings with the complete source history. Her attorney issued a formal cease and desist letter to the Reed agency. The exhibition appointed an independent reviewer to compare the metadata, artist permissions, communication dates, and design development on both sides. 3 days later, Clare's project status was restored. The Reed agency was suspended. The Reed family did not retreat. That afternoon, Margaret Cole arrived at the unfinished studio space Clare was considering in Brooklyn. She placed a cashier's check for $1 million on the bare plywood table. "Withdraw your claims against Reed Creative. Stop allowing Ethan's medical history to circulate. The child has already passed a paternity test. The trust and the partnership between the companies cannot be threatened because you refuse to move on." Clare looked at the check and laughed softly. "You think I am doing this to punish Ethan? What else would it be?" Margaret replied. "You restart your design career the moment the divorce is signed. You happen to win a project the Cole Foundation has been watching. You want to prove Ethan cannot function without you." Clare pushed the check back across the table. "First, I am pursuing unauthorized access to a private cloud account and theft of copyrighted work. Second, I have never released Ethan's medical information to the press or to your board. Third, the Cole Foundation expressed interest in the exhibition only after I won the assignment. She paused. As for the paternity report, you may want to ask whose blood was actually tested. Margaret's face tightened. What are you suggesting? A reliable legal paternity test requires identity verification, witnessed collection, sealed transport, and a documented chain of custody. Vanessa's report has none of those protections. Margaret left in a fury and repeated every word to Ethan. It was the first time he learned that Clare had not exposed his diagnosis to a single director, lender, or reporter. She had not even contacted the board. He confronted Vanessa that night. She cried first. Then she produced a video of the blood draw. A nurse appeared to place a vial into a specimen pouch while the camera recorded the process. My father used a medical team he trusted because he was afraid your private information would leak, she said. You doubted me once because of Claire's old report. Are you really going to doubt our child again? The video made Ethan more suspicious, not less. Daniel identified the nurse as a contract employee of Reed Medical Network, not Northbridge Genetics. The video had been recorded 2 days before the date entered in the laboratory system. The security number on the specimen seal could not be traced. Ethan demanded a new test. This time, both parties would appear at a certified independent collection center. Each would present government-issued photo identification. The samples would be witnessed, sealed, and delivered by a third-party courier to an accredited laboratory. Vanessa refused. The following morning, she was admitted to a private hospital owned by her family for what her publicist described as a threatened miscarriage. Reed Capital then supplied selected information to the press, suggesting Ethan had been manipulated by his former wife and had endangered a pregnant woman by demanding repeated testing. Cole Holdings was private, but it was preparing a $200 million acquisition and negotiating a new credit facility. 2 lenders paused approval. The acquisition target demanded that the board resolve the succession dispute and what it called material governance instability. Margaret ordered Ethan to end the scandal. Richard Reed came to Cole Holdings with a solution already prepared. Ethan would issue a public apology, set a wedding date, and transfer 3% of his personal Cole Holdings shares into an irrevocable trust for the unborn child. Reed Capital would restore its financing commitment and move forward with a joint investment fund. At the company's current valuation, 3% was worth more than $27 million, not including future distributions. Ethan finally saw the architecture behind Vanessa's pregnancy. This was not only about marriage. It was about voting rights, cash flow, leverage, and control. He did not refuse the proposal immediately. He said any transfer required review under the Certificate of Incorporation, shareholder agreement, and existing restrictions on personal share transfers. Richard mistook caution for surrender. That night, Ethan returned alone to the estate. For the first time in years, he opened the company archives from the beginning. Clare's influence was everywhere. The original identity system, early vendor contracts, retail presentation materials, notes to investors, launch photography, packaging proofs marked in her handwriting. She had not been an accessory to his success. She had been one of the people who carried the company when it was too weak to stand. And he had ended their marriage with a payment, then responded to the fertility report by suspecting she had lied. That realization humiliated him more deeply than the diagnosis itself. He sent Clare one message. Cole Holdings will comply with all lawful requests concerning the intrusion into your cloud account. I will not contact you about anything else. Her reply came several minutes later. Follow the process. 4 words. No anger. No invitation. Ethan understood that whatever place he once held in her life no longer existed. Clare did not accept private assistance from Ethan. Cole Holdings offered to produce an internal statement. She required the company to preserve its data and provide records through counsel, forensic review, and formal requests. She listed Cole Holdings as a relevant custodian, like every other entity involved. I do not need him to declare me innocent, she told Rachel. I need evidence no one can reverse when his guilt becomes inconvenient. The independent investigation concluded that Clare was the creator. The Reed agency had obtained the work through unauthorized access, rushed it into publication, and then accused the original artist of infringement. The Santa Fe exhibition restored Clare's contract and terminated Reed Creative's participation. Her first project payment arrived the following week. Clare leased part of a converted warehouse in Brooklyn and registered her company as Afterlight Studio. $30 million would have allowed her to buy the entire building. Instead, she approved a limited startup budget through the trust and left the rest invested. She refused to let every future design be dismissed as something purchased with her former husband's money. Halfway through construction, the landlord announced that he intended to terminate the lease. Two young designers Clare had recruited received anonymous warnings that she had stolen trade secrets from Cole Holdings and might face a lawsuit large enough to bankrupt the studio. That same afternoon, the print shop handling her exhibition samples canceled its production slot. Within hours, the contractor stopped, the employees hesitated, and the client began asking whether Clare could still deliver. Rachel urged her to relocate. Julian offered temporary space in his company's offices. Clare refused to disappear. Her attorney discovered that a real estate fund linked to Reed Capital had offered the landlord a premium to take over the entire floor. Clare sought an emergency injunction based on the lease's termination and interference provisions. She also published a transparent record of Afterlight's project sources, copyright registrations, and competitive awards. "I can accept a legitimate partnership," she told Julian. "But I cannot spend the rest of my life running beneath the roof of the next powerful person who offers protection." For the first time, Julian stopped seeing her as a talented woman recovering from divorce. He saw a founder. During the legal dispute, a junior designer from Reed Creative contacted Clare's attorney. She admitted that managers had ordered the team to use files downloaded from the old Cole Holdings computer. She provided internal emails, bonus payments, and revision histories. A judge issued temporary relief, preventing the landlord from removing Afterlight while the dispute was pending. Reed Creative became the subject of copyright and commercial misconduct claims and lost its place in the exhibition entirely. Afterlight Studio opened without celebrities, photographers, or a champagne tower. Only 15 people attended: Rachel, Helen, Julian, the local artists Clare had worked with, her two young designers, and the workers who had finished the space. Standing beneath the sign she had designed, Clare remembered the first office plaque she had created for Cole Holdings. When it went up, Ethan had kissed her forehead and promised that everyone would one day know she was the company's greatest contributor. The company had become successful. Her name had vanished. Now her name was on her own door. At the same time, Ethan completed a more invasive reproductive evaluation. The physicians still found no evidence supporting natural conception. Daniel continued tracing the Northbridge sample. The contract nurse had received a $100,000 consulting payment 1 week after the collection. Lucas Grant, Vanessa's former college boyfriend, had suddenly paid off more than $200,000 in gambling debt and received another $500,000 from an offshore consulting company. Hotel records placed Lucas and Vanessa together repeatedly during the period in which she claimed to have conceived Ethan's child. Then Lucas contacted Daniel. Vanessa had promised him $5 million after the child's trust was funded and had arranged for him to leave the United States. She had paid only a fraction and later threatened to destroy him if he spoke. Through a criminal attorney, Lucas approached the Manhattan District Attorney's office. He offered his messages, hotel receipts, payment records, and biological sample. Under advice of counsel, he recorded a call with Vanessa. "The baby is mine," Lucas said during the conversation. "When do I get the rest of the money?" "When Ethan transfers the 3% into the trust," Vanessa replied. "You take the $5 million and leave New York. No one ever learns that the male blood sent to the lab was yours." The recording also captured her admitting that the nurse had relabeled Lucas's sample as Ethan's. With the transfers, falsified medical records, specimen substitution, and proposed stock trust, prosecutors began preparing applications for search and arrest warrants. Ethan did not expose Vanessa immediately. Cole Holdings' 20th anniversary gala was 1 month away. Richard Reed intended to announce the engagement, the joint fund, and the child trust in front of directors, lenders, acquisition partners, and the press. The district attorney's investigators wanted the original files, devices, and signatories together. They also wanted evidence of the defendant's continuing attempt to obtain the shares through the false paternity claim. Ethan agreed to let the gala proceed. Not because he believed Vanessa. Because he wanted the scheme to end on the stage where it was supposed to succeed. The ballroom of a Manhattan hotel glittered on the night of Cole Holdings' anniversary gala. Vanessa wore a custom white gown. Her pregnancy was now clearly visible. She stood beside Margaret for photographs, as though she were already the future head of the Cole family. Richard Reed occupied the center table with his attorneys. The joint fund agreement and the unborn child's trust documents waited in a leather portfolio at his side. The moment Ethan signed, 3% of his personal shares would enter an irrevocable trust. Vanessa, as the child's mother, would influence the administration of the trust until the child reached adulthood. Clare had not intended to attend. Afterlight Studio, however, had won an anonymous competitive bid to design the company's 20th anniversary gift collection. She was contractually required to complete the delivery. The Reed team had also filed another accusation that she had used Cole property, and several independent directors requested a direct presentation concerning ownership and licensing. Clare entered in a sharply tailored black suit. Every camera turned toward her. Margaret's face darkened. Who invited her? Vanessa moved forward before anyone could answer, raising her voice for the nearby reporters. Clare is welcome to wish us well. I only hope she will not use outdated medical papers to ruin such an important night for Ethan and our baby. Whispers moved through the room. Some guests believed Clare had taken $30 million and remained obsessed. Others claimed she had built her studio with resources stolen from her former husband. Many simply waited for the divorced wife to make a scene. Clare handed the project completion documents to the event director. I am here to perform the obligations in my contract, she said. Nothing more. Richard Reed opened the program with a speech about continuity, family, and partnership. He presented the engagement, joint investment fund, and child trust as a single solution to Cole Holdings' succession concerns. The bank representatives relaxed. So did the acquisition team. When the time came to sign, Ethan left the pen on the table. Before I transfer shares to this child, he said, looking directly at Vanessa, I need several facts confirmed. The screen behind him came alive. The first document was not Clare's 5-year-old report. It was Ethan's current independent medical evaluation, accompanied by the specialist's explanation that the findings were profoundly inconsistent with natural conception. Next came Northbridge Genetics' accreditation status, the missing chain of custody documentation, the untraceable seal number, and the absence of any verified record showing Ethan had supplied the male sample. The room became silent. Vanessa's face went white. This was arranged by Clare and you. You were trying to force me to give up my baby. Clare had no role in the investigation, Ethan said. She did not know what would happen tonight. Daniel signaled to the production team. The screen showed the nurse's $100,000 payment, Lucas's gambling debts, and the offshore transfers. A verified audio recording followed. Lucas's voice filled the ballroom. The baby is mine. When do I get the money you promised? Vanessa's reply was unmistakable. After Ethan signs. You take $5 million and leave the country. No one ever learns the male blood sent to the lab belonged to you. Vanessa lunged toward the control station. Turn it off. It is edited. This is blackmail. Hotel security blocked her. The side doors opened, and Lucas entered with his attorney. He did not look triumphant. He looked terrified. He confirmed that he had surrendered his original phone, messages, hotel records, and biological sample to investigators. He admitted helping substitute the sample and conceal the baby's identity. Richard Reed slammed his palm against the table and accused Lucas of extortion. Before he could leave, investigators from the Manhattan District Attorney's Office and detectives assigned to financial crimes entered through the opposite doors. They presented search and arrest warrants signed by a judge. The officers had not made their decision after watching a ballroom video. For weeks, prosecutors had reviewed the financial transfers, falsified medical documents, specimen substitution, and trust plan. Devices were secured. The trust papers were seized. Reed Capital files brought to the event were placed into evidence bags. The fraud had collapsed. Vanessa made one final attempt to save herself. She pointed at Clare. She did this. She paid Lucas because she hates me. She used Cole money to open her company, and she stole Cole Holdings designs. She is the fraud. Every face turned toward Clare. For the first time that evening, Clare walked onto the stage. She did not look at Vanessa. She gave the event director a third-party forensic report, copyright records, anonymous bid documents, and a complete licensing schedule. The screen displayed Clare's award-winning work from college, the original Cole Holdings source files, the creation dates, the scope of each license, and the later unauthorized downloads from her private account. Much of Cole Holdings' original brand identity and early investor material was created by me, she said. Some of that work was licensed to the company for continuing use. Other pieces remained my personal property. I did not remove trade secrets from Cole Holdings. Someone used credentials left on an old company computer to enter my private cloud account. Afterlight's audited startup records and anonymous bid number appeared next. The divorce settlement was property I received in exchange for waiving further claims to the marital appreciation of the company. Less than 10% of that amount was budgeted for the studio. Every project was won through a documented process. Anyone who believes I infringed a right may present evidence in court. Anyone who believes I lack talent may present better work. No one spoke. Julian then confirmed that Afterlight had won the anniversary collection through anonymous review. Ethan, Margaret, and the Cole board had never seen the entrant's identity before scoring was complete. An independent Cole director stated that the Reed complaint contained altered timestamps and misleading descriptions. Vanessa's last accusation disintegrated in front of everyone. Ethan did not tear up the trust papers for dramatic effect. Tearing a document would not determine its legal force. He formally refused to sign. Company counsel announced that the child trust would not be created, the joint fund was terminated, and Cole Holdings would cooperate with every criminal and civil investigation. Richard tried to escort Vanessa away. Investigators stopped them. As Vanessa was led from the ballroom, she twisted toward Clare and screamed, "You won. This is what you wanted, to see me lose everything." Clare looked at her without anger. "I never considered you my opponent. You destroyed yourself because you believed a marriage, a child, another woman's work, and company shares could all be taken with the right lie." By midnight, the supposed Cole heir, the Reed joint fund, and Ethan's new marriage had all disappeared. By the following afternoon, Afterlight's anniversary collection had received more than 20,000 corporate orders. Ethan sat alone in the empty ballroom long after the investigators, reporters, and guests had gone. Vanessa's fraud was monstrous. But she had not destroyed his marriage by herself. Ethan had needed an heir badly enough to ignore the woman who had carried him through failure. He had treated Clare's labor as a natural extension of being his wife. He had accepted his mother's cruelty because challenging it was inconvenient. Even after seeing the fertility report, his first instinct had been to suspect Clare rather than question the people who benefited from the pregnancy. Vanessa had exploited his arrogance. She had not created it. The next morning, Cole Holdings held a press conference. Everyone expected Ethan to place all blame on the Reed family. Instead, he acknowledged three things publicly. He had been unfaithful during his marriage. He had allowed Clare to be blamed for their inability to have a child, and he had used family and corporate pressure to force a settlement before verifying the facts. "Clare Bennett did not sabotage my engagement," he said into the cameras. "She never gave my medical records to the press. She never asked a director, lender, or employee to act against me. The speculation and humiliation directed at her were consequences of my decisions. The responsibility is mine." The statement spread across national business and entertainment media. Some praised him for taking responsibility. Others correctly observed that public honesty did not erase private cruelty. Clare watched the video from her office and put her phone down. Rachel studied her face. Nothing. I accept the correction of the record, Claire said. But an apology is not a check that can be exchanged for reconciliation. Ethan did not pursue her. Through their attorneys, he issued a formal declaration identifying Clare as the creator of substantial portions of Cole Holdings' early brand system. The company corrected its archives and paid the licensing fees she should have received years earlier. Clare accepted the credit and the factual correction. She donated the back licensing payment to an organization that helped women return to work after caregiving and family interruptions. She would not allow her future to remain attached to Ethan's guilt. The investigation into Vanessa widened. Prosecutors found that she had not merely falsified prenatal and paternity documents. She had obtained a $4 million apartment and $2 million in transfers from Ethan by calling them a safe residence and security account for the baby. She had paid the nurse and Lucas hidden payments through consulting entities and prepared to obtain shares worth tens of millions through the false parentage claim. The charging decisions would belong to prosecutors and the courts, but the potential allegations included falsifying business records, using false medical documents, conspiracy, and attempted acquisition of property through fraud. Lucas was not treated as a hero. He had helped switch the sample, concealed the truth, and demanded money. His cooperation might reduce his punishment. It did not make him innocent. Reed Capital's offices were searched, its financing deals froze, and Richard Reed's reputation collapsed along with the joint fund. Margaret had no defense left. She waited outside Afterlight Studio for 2 hours and asked to see Clare. Clare did not allow her upstairs. She sent one message through reception. I do not need recognition that arrived after the damage. I will not accept another demand for forgiveness disguised as family duty. Margaret left without calling her ungrateful. For once, she had nothing to say. Afterlight, meanwhile, faced a crisis more dangerous than scandal: success. The anniversary collection had gone viral. Orders arrived faster than a small studio could produce them. Printers raised prices. A batch of sustainable paper stock came back with unacceptable color variation. 2 suppliers warned that they could not meet the delivery schedule. If Clare failed, she would owe penalties and lose the credibility she had only just earned. In the past, she would have opened Ethan's vendor list or asked him to make a phone call. She did neither. She and her team visited 6 factories, created a new color control standard, divided the orders among qualified suppliers, and negotiated phased delivery schedules with every client. Clare sacrificed margin rather than replace approved materials with cheaper substitutes. For 1 week, she slept 3 hours a night. Julian offered bridge financing. Clare accepted only the project advance permitted under their contract, with a written budget, repayment schedule, and delivery milestones. A month later, every order was complete. The return rate was far below the industry average. Afterlight was no longer a studio made famous by a rich family scandal. It was a company that had survived a real operational test. When the National Design Innovation Awards invited Clare to enter, she did not submit the collection that had made headlines. She entered a new line called Restart. The collection used discarded textiles, reclaimed wood, and traceable packaging. Women returning to paid work after years of caregiving helped produce the line and received transparent wages, training, and revenue participation. For the first time, Clare had turned her private pain into something that created opportunity for other people. 1 week before the award finals, another anonymous accusation appeared. The complaint claimed Restart exaggerated its social impact numbers. It also included a photograph of Clare speaking with Ethan backstage at a hotel, framed to suggest she had used his influence with the event's sponsors. The suspicion was not entirely irrational. The Cole Family Foundation had pledged sponsorship money to the awards 6 months earlier. Ethan was still one of the foundation's directors. Several members of Clare's team urged her to withdraw rather than risk another public battle. Clare refused to hide. She asked the organizers to release her anonymous judging number, publish all sponsor recusal procedures, and commission an independent audit of Restart's worker count, wages, training expenses, and social impact funds. She signed a written pledge to withdraw and return any honor if a single material claim proved false. When Ethan learned of the challenge, he immediately removed himself from every foundation responsibility connected to that year's awards. He authorized the release of the foundation's communications with the organizers. The records showed that he had never received the judges' names, entry numbers, or scoring materials. The photograph had been taken when Clare and Ethan completed the formal transfer of authorship and licensing records for Cole Holdings' early designs. Both legal teams and several staff members had been present. The independent audit confirmed every figure disclosed by Afterlight. Wages, training costs, and revenue shares were supported by payroll and bank records. The anonymous complaint was eventually traced to an email account controlled by a former Reed creative executive. On the night of the finals, Clare stood beneath the stage lights and said nothing about her divorce. She did not use betrayal as a marketing strategy. She spoke about the work. She explained how abandoned materials had been redesigned rather than disguised. She described women who had spent years caring for children or aging parents and were now learning sewing production, digital layout, inventory management, and online sales. She said restarting did not mean erasing the past. It meant choosing what power the past would have over the future. One judge leaned forward. "Why are you so committed to the subject?" Clare was quiet for a moment. "Because I once placed the value of my life inside another person's promise," she said. "I learned that the most reliable thing is not someone swearing they will love you forever. It is knowing that, whatever happens, you have the ability to begin again." Restart won the Gold Award and the Special Prize for Social Innovation. When the presenter announced, "After Light Studio, Clare Bennett," the room rose in applause. Her name was no longer hidden behind a husband, a corporation, or a family dynasty. Ethan sat in the last row. He did not bring flowers to the stage. He did not create a public scene about regret and lost love. After the crowd began to leave, he handed Rachel a sealed letter. There was no request for another chance inside. He wrote that he had mistaken Clare's patience for weakness, her silence for agreement, and her work for a marital obligation. He promised that he would not enter her life again under the language of concern, protection, or redemption. Clare read the letter once and placed it in the bottom drawer of her desk. Not as a treasure. Not as forgiveness. As a period at the end of a sentence. At the celebration dinner, Julian proposed an investment in Afterlight. Clare rejected the version that would have given his company control. She accepted a revised strategic partnership with equal protections and final creative authority remaining in her hands. She had learned that independence did not require refusing every form of help. It required the freedom to decide whether the help respected her boundaries. Later, Rachel mentioned Owen Parker again, an architect who had asked to meet Clare several times. A year earlier, Clare would have rejected the idea before Rachel finished the sentence. This time, she smiled. "I can have coffee." She no longer believed one failed marriage proved love was impossible. She also no longer believed love would save her. It could come. It could leave. She was complete either way. 2 years later, Afterlight Studio had grown from a small Brooklyn team into an independent brand with 3 product lines. Clare did not expand recklessly. She refused to market herself as the abandoned wife who had received $30 million. She disclosed the source of her startup capital, commissioned annual third-party audits, and made certain the public could see the contracts, deliveries, and people behind the work. A portion of the company's profits funded the Afterlight Restart program, which provided design training, short-term placements, and employment referrals for women returning to the workforce after pregnancy, childcare, or family caregiving. At the program's launch, a reporter asked the question Clare knew would follow her for years. Could you have succeeded without the $30 million divorce settlement? Clare did not avoid it. The money gave me a margin for error, she said. It could not draw a design, negotiate a contract, or carry a team through a failed production run. What changed my life was not receiving $30 million. It was finally stopping my wait for someone else to give me a place. The sentence became the headline most widely shared from the event. Cole Holdings changed as well. Ethan abandoned the obsession with bloodline succession. He supported professional management, clarified the boundaries between the family trust and corporate control, and created benefits for reproductive health treatment, adoption, and non-traditional families. He did not advertise those reforms as proof that Clare should forgive him. He did not contact her. Occasionally, he saw her in industry news. Afterlight won another award. The company opened a new product line. Clare entered a long-term licensing partnership with artists in Santa Fe. He would pause for a few seconds, then continue with his day. At last, Ethan understood that regret did not mean forcing someone to return. It meant accepting the loss and changing the part of yourself that had caused it. That autumn, Clare returned to Santa Fe for a new collection. She stood outside an adobe building turned gold by the setting sun, making final notes on a display sketch, when Owen approached with 2 coffees. "Tell me you did not forget lunch again." Clare accepted a cup and smiled. "I remembered lunch existed." "That is not the same answer." "Then you already know the truth." At the opening of Santa Fe Design Week that evening, Cole Holdings happened to be represented as a technology partner. Ethan saw Clare across the room. He also saw Owen standing beside her. Their eyes met through the crowd. Ethan did not cross the room. Clare did not look away. She gave him a small, calm nod, then turned back to the artists discussing the installation. Neither of them was angry. 5 years earlier, Ethan had believed $30 million could assign a price to the end of a marriage. Clare had believed enough patience and sacrifice could purchase a whole family. They had both been wrong. Some relationships did not end so that one person could kneel in regret forever. They ended so that the person trapped inside them could find herself again. The high desert wind moved across the terrace and lifted the pages of Clare's design book. On the first page was the title of the new collection, Toward the Light. Clare closed the book and walked toward the bright line of sunset beyond the city. This time, she was not leaving anyone else's world. She was finally living in her own.